in a name. Admittedly, when films are in question, much more than meets the eye. The ancient Greeks, we understand, already had a word for it, cinematograph, motion writing. Thus, by borrowing a nom de plume, we bridge the gap of centuries and the fun commences. The first real boom in motion pictures came in the 90s, and from various sources, under strangest guise, announced themselves to an astonished world. Making their modest bow as novelty items in music halls and variety theaters, they swiftly overnight to top the bill. And the same sweeping success followed the new flickering wonder up and down the country and well into the turn of the century. We can imagine perhaps Tommy Atkins returning home from South Africa and taking his folks to see the Boer War on the Pathescope. At all events, life went on pretty contentedly. A new monarch reigned, King Edward VII, Edward the Peacemaker. There was high promise of prosperity ahead. A new era dawned of goodwill and friendliness. Against this background, numerous conceptions, now long established in the world of films, were foreshadowed. Proudly advertised as being as British as the Union Jack, Alfred West's Our Navy was Britain's first regular film presentation to fill a program of 2 hours. Its success in London was phenomenal and ran continuously for 3 years. On tour for a decade, it had them cheering and standing on the seats. And sound films, too. As early as 1902, Léon Gaumont successfully introduced his synchronized gramophone and film device, the chronomegaphone. Later, at the London Hippodrome, for a year. Many beloved personalities of Edwardian music hall fame were captured, singing their patter and clowning larger than life. And so, quite naturally, variety theatres became the happy hunting ground for pioneer screen material. The majority, however, being mere repetitions of well-known stage comedy acts. And here we take pleasure in presenting, after more than 50 years, something entirely different, one of the earliest and unique creations of the French cinema living here, made by Georges Méliès, recognized father of the trick film. And incidentally, Méliès also established precedence by introducing his trademark brand on the screen. Though worn by half a century of time, it remains a neat little cameo of cleverness in camera magic. In his day, his originality and zest for work was amazing, and with Madame Méliès, he produced some 400 pictures. So there you have it, the ancestor of modern film comedy and of countless millions of screen laughs. It was, however, the fairgrounds which really brought pictures to millions at a time when they languished in the music halls. Traveling showmen were enterprising enough to risk a gamble which turned what might have been a 9 days wonder into a real business proposition. All the fun of the fair. And an added attraction would often be gorgeously attired paraders or elocutionists who vividly described films as they progressed. And what variety! A complete change every day, never a dull moment, when your ears grew accustomed to the blare from half a dozen giant orchestrophones. The thrill of a real film story was only just beginning. Still, the novelty of movement held audiences enthralled, as in this primitive movie, The Professor's Awful Mistake, or The Man Who Invented an Electric Elixir. We know it now as a camera gag, as old as film itself, yet it never fails to raise a smile. The incentives given motion pictures by the travelling showman gave tremendous impetus to film production in Britain round about 1906 and 7. And the following remarkable little picture, causing a mild sensation at that time, vividly portrays the progress made in film production in little more than half a decade. Viewed in the light of present-day standards, it now appears an extremely tense affair, to say the least. But how ambitious it all was 45 years ago, when Britain with France held pride of place in the world film market. An actor in these early days was nothing if not versatile. He would paint the sets as well as act in the scenes, and if he lived nearby, it was more than likely that his wife and youngsters appeared in the crowd. Frequently, much of his home dressed the set. Overacted and melodramatic to the point of burlesque, yet for all that, the essential plainly visible, in primitive fashion, for a dozen spectacular plain or colored movies of another generation. Cheer, boys, cheer! It's small wonder, then, that audiences, fired with enthusiasm at such scenes of daring do, should demand to know the real identities of the performers, who, like most real heroes, prefer to remain anonymous. Aha, the chase comic. In this once popular institution, Britain again held its own. Sneezing powder with little Miss Unity Moore was forerunner of the Hepworth Company's celebrated Tilly the Tomboy series. Riotous nonsense was the formula for all chase comics, aided and abetted by noisy songs. First thing was to start your comedian running. The rest followed on quite unnaturally. A rough and tumble for everybody, with passers-by joining in the horseplay. hop across the channel, where we'll find the mixture much as before. Retribution overtakes the culprit for a real old-time knockabout finale with never a moment to worry about technique. Where, people have frequently asked, do the old films go? Perhaps this little innovation partly supplies an answer. Showmen at one time practiced it quite extensively, until it was discovered that schoolboys found something else to collect instead of giving the handbills out. Laughter and tears shared equal honors in shows of yesterday, and no program, however varied, was considered really complete unless it included at least one of the so-called moral dramas. The Sentimental Thief is very typical of their kind, simple, down to earth. It soon became evident that homely little plots such as this had decidedly more appeal to film audiences than all the big names and lavish trappings brought into pictures from the stage and acted in the grand manner of the theatre. And thus it came about that the screen concentrated in creating a style of exaggerated miming, distinctly its own, and in discovering its own particular players. For this, recall, was the golden age of the family electric theatre, the little shop around the corner. 1908, the heyday of the Edwardian era, significant year in cinema history, era of gay waltzes, catchy songs, lovely actresses, and picture postcards, of fads and fancies, crazes and phases, and all were merrily reflected to the silent screen like a running commentary of the time. Came the high spot of the year to celebrate our entente cordiale with France, the white city of happy memories. Those were the days when a pound was a sovereign in gold, when income tax was 10pence in the pound, beer was 2pence a pint, and sweets 4 ounces a penny. Who couldn't afford to do the cakewalk, or spend a whole afternoon on the joy wheel? Why, for 2 bob, one could have a day's outing. Here's an interesting exhibition snap. One of the earliest real cinemas, a theatre especially built for film presentation. Within a year, the erection of cinemas in Britain had become an epidemic. As seen on an old movie, the submarine railway was a modification of the panorama film idea used by Hale's tours and similar excursions of 40-odd years ago. So, from being almost an nonentity, movies grew into a respectable cousin in the entertainment family, and with a home of its own. At a time when Jules Verne was still a bestseller, film manufacturers, in their search for novelty, frequently turned his pages for ideas. And Verne's fantastic exploits, with pardonable variations, were found ideal for juvenile films, then a regular inclusion in any cinema's bill of fare. Little Jimmy's Nightmare is an ingenious example of pioneering into the realms of film fantasy. Gay little pictures of this nature were hardy annuals for years, and under the brand of pantomime films were revived at all holiday seasons, be it Christmas or otherwise. Some of us older ones will no doubt recall the extraordinary scare of 1909, when talk of invasion of Britain filled the air, when the press, novelists, and playwrights seized upon the one topic of the day which had so completely captured public imagination and, to some extent, caused considerable alarm. We would remind you that the film about to be seen, again, is well over 40 years old. Incredible as it now seems, it was produced in all seriousness, when the scare of aggression from a foreign power had reached its peak, and the country was being urged by several well-known national figures to rally to the cause of preparedness. In the light of more recent events, and all too familiar, we shall say no more. For here indeed film is seen as no false prophet. Ambitious, ludicrous, call it what you will, yet not so preposterous after all, despite its cardboard sets and puppet-like characters. Was it not a grim reminder to Edwardians that this indeed could happen in the progressive 20th century? Propaganda, perhaps, who knows? Your guess is as good as ours. The amazing swiftness of the motion picture's growth is exemplified by this scene of Edison's original makeshift kinetoscope studio of the 90s, compared with the studio of 1909, the prototype, more or less, of others the world over. But still, something had to be done to divorce motion pictures from inventive names. There had long been confusion of ideas. So a name contest was held, and the winner, photoplay, which surprisingly no one had thought up before. And so was brought into being the first credited stock company of photoplayers, the Edison of New Jersey pioneers of railroad drama, for which we again get back into 1909. Incidentally, we reintroduce two members of America's first film stock company, Laura Sawyer and William Betchell, both long since forgotten. the red tablecloth. Here, of course, the predecessor of the serial film, though some time had yet to elapse before it actually arrived. But as they warned us in those hectic days, look out, it's coming. Now, although at this time picture making was going on in California, Hollywood itself remained still undiscovered, and the majority of horse operas were concocted in New Jersey, within almost a stone's throw of New York. And curious mixtures they now appear, half Western, half downright theatrical melodrama. That's father, I suppose.